Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says Tapping Technology for Multilingual Learning. The article here is speaking about the importance of mother tongue in education. It speaks about how with the onslaught of globalization and westernization, number of indigenous languages are getting into the endangered mode, how we can make use of the technology to overcome all these barriers and limitations. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. What do we understand by mother tongue? Mother tongue is that particular language that a child speaks. It is a language that a person speaks from the very birth. So what is mother tongue? It is the language which is most often spoken by the child or by that particular person, and it is the language which is being spoken at the house of that individual. What is mother tongue in education? When a child or a person goes to an educational institution, the educational institution teaches that person in the native language, in the indigenous language, or the language that a person speaks at home. So basically, mother tongue in education refers to when a school or an educational institution integrates the language of the child with the classroom learning. Why are we discussing this? That is because there is a lot of significance and importance when it comes to learning a particular subject in that particular language. Let's say, for example, because a particular child happens to speak a language at home, it already knows the nuances of that particular language. So, mother tongue develops a child's personal, social, and cultural identity, and it already knows what that language is. It need not have to know new words and combinations, and ultimately, it would be able to comprehend that particular subject in a much better way. So, a mother tongue language helps a child develop critical thinking and also the literacy skills, and would be able to understand the curriculum in a much better way. In fact, children, when they go to the schools, number of surveys also have said that they would enjoy the syllabus much better. They would also enjoy the learning if it is in the mother tongue, as they feel comfortable in such an environment. In fact, if they also learn in the mother tongue, what would happen? There would also be parents who would also be able to teach their children as well, and ultimately parent child interaction also increases, and these parents would be able to assist the children in their homework. So what is the author telling? The author in this particular context goes on to say that with the onslaught of globalization and westernization, number of indigenous languages are facing a threat, and ultimately number of cultural identities, linguistic identities are getting washed away. This is where the author brings into picture UNESCO Director General Koichiro Matsuura, who once says that the language we learn from our mothers, which is the mother tongue, is the homeland of our innermost thoughts. So when we are able to learn with the mother tongue, we would be able to comprehend better, we would be able to analyze better, we would be able to develop critical thinking, and we would have literacy skills much better than when we learn from other languages, says this article. So this article goes on to say that India is a land of diversity. India has myriad religions, languages, customs, so on and so forth. So while we consider these myriad languages where each of us have our own linguistic identity, protecting it becomes very important, says the author. So the author brings in this particular backdrop the International Mother Language Day. The International Mother Language Day is celebrated every year on February 21st. This is celebrated so that we can promote the importance of a particular language, so that we would be able to protect all the languages that people speak in and around the world. So remember, the International Mother Language Day is celebrated every year on Feb 21st, and this is for the promotion and protection of the mother tongue languages. So UNESCO has been striving to protect the cultural and linguistic identities, thereby most of the countries take up active measure to promote mother tongue languages as well. According to the UN agency, at least 43% of the estimated 6,000 languages spoken in the world are endangered, since they are in the threshold of being endangered because they do not have people who speak this particular language. It is not being passed on from one generation to another. This particular language in the endangered mode can ultimately become extinct because there are less number of speakers. So this article goes on to say we have to protect, we have to ensure that we pass on the language from one generation to another, and at the same time we have to ensure that such a language is also used in the education. Let me give you one of the important factual data. When we look into which country has the most number of languages, we are not speaking about the dialects, we are speaking about the major languages that are being spoken in that particular country. The first happens to be Papua New Guinea, which has about 840 languages, followed by Indonesia, followed by Nigeria, and we have fourth as India as well. So the major languages that are spoken in India is as many as 456. These statistics are in reference to the year 2021. It might have been updated in 2022, but for now, with respect to 2021, these are the countries which have maximum number of languages when it comes to that particular country according to the global statistics. Now, if we look into the year 2022, and if we consider the theme for the International Mother Language Day, what is the theme? The theme is using technology for multilingual learning, challenges and opportunities. What is it speaking about? We spoke about languages getting endangered. So what this particular year theme says is that we have to make use of the technology so that this particular technology is used to safeguard, protect and ultimately pass on the languages from one generation to another. Added to it, we did also speak about education as well. So when we are speaking about the education, whether it is technological domain, whether it is medical domain, arts domain, commerce domain, irrespective of which domain we are speaking about, what we can also have is multilingual learning. As of now, when you consider India, you might have English as the medium. So apart from English as the medium, if it is being taught in a language of mother tongue, that will be more receptive, says 2022's theme. So basically this article goes on to say that we have to make use of the technology so that it is not only English as a medium of communication where a particular subject is being taught, but it also has to be multilingual, says the 2022 theme for the International Mother Language Day. What do we understand by this? How do we make use of it? Let's say, for example, we have the number of social media platforms. Let's say we have YouTube, or let's say we have any other video recording options as well. So what we have to do is to teach a particular language. This particular language should be kept as a repository where vast amount of information is transferred from one generation to another. We take the example of Hindi, or let's take the example of Bengali, or let's take the example of Tamil, or any other language for that matter. So basically we need those native speakers teaching this particular language so that it is passed on from one generation to another, that is through the social media platforms. So we are making use of the technology, we are making use of the internet penetration, we are making use of the language so that we can connect to people all over the world. So recording and preserving the languages is the need of the hour. So we have to make use of the technology, and ultimately there are also other organizations as well. Let's say, for example, organizations, NGOs working for the safeguarding and protection of the languages. These organizations already have developed number of talking dictionaries as well. We have also developed applications as well. So most of the people who are conversing in English might have a difficulty in understanding a language. Why? Because they don't know that particular language. So what we require is an application. This application will ensure that there is one language being converted into another language. So there is transfer of language from one generation to another, and at the same time we also have number of talking dictionaries whereby we preserve the indigenous languages as well. So making use of the technology, social media and people speaking and preserving that particular language is need of the hour. Then the author also brings into picture what is called as the National Education Policy of 2020. When we speak about the National Education Policy, it has taken a visionary paradigm. What are we speaking about? It speaks about creating a positive impact on learning outcomes by making use of multiple languages. We have multiple languages in India. India is a land of myriad languages as well. So making use of some of the major languages conveying the meaning of education, teaching a particular subject in the native language is also one of the paradigm models that is also being developed as part of National Education Policy 2020. So the author says, as part of the policy making, the government of India has introduced multilingual process whereby technology will be used, and at the same time using the technology, what they are planning to do is teach to the people so that they are receptive to that particular subject in their native language. So the author goes on to say that we have to make use of the technology, we have to make use of multiple other languages, and ultimately give information to the people. But what is the problem here? The problem is that we do not have the repository or the vocabulary or verbose. What do we mean by it? Let's say for example we take engineering as a domain, or let's take for example we take medicine as one of the domains. There are large number of words in this particular subject which is usually in English. So what we have to do, we have to create and improve scientific and technical terminology, which means increase the vocabulary, increase the number of words with respect to the technical terms and conditions. So if we are able to bring up and come up with this vocabulary, terminology, people would be able to understand much better. If we are speaking about diode, if we are speaking about transistors, or we are speaking about any other technical terminology, if the same can be introduced in a regional languages, then students would be much receptive to this particular mode of communication. In fact, we've also had Sir C.V. Raman, who once said we must teach science in our mother tongue, otherwise science will become a highbrow activity. It will not be an activity in which all people would want to participate. So the major challenge that we have is that we do not have the terminology. These terminologies will have to be converted into native language, and then there will be much better reception, says the author. Added to it, there was a survey conducted by All India Council for Technical Education in the year 2020. This involved more than 83,000 students. Nearly 44% of the students voted in favor of studying engineering in their mother tongue. Why? Because they are receptive to the mother tongue. They are in a much better condition to understand what is being taught. So the author in this particular case says that we require more terminology, we require more words, more vocabulary, so that when there is a mode of communication happening in the native language, the students are receptive to this particular process. So the author goes on to say the government has already taken a number of measures, one in the form of including it in the National Education Policy of 2020. The other is the government has developed Swayam tool as well, that is study webs of active learning for young aspiring minds. These are the online programs conducted by the government of India. As of now, these are the tech-led initiatives where it is being taught in multiple regional languages. For example, Tamil, Hindi, Telugu, Kannada, Bengali, Marathi, Malayalam, Gujarati, so on and so forth. So we already have the mode established where the central government, by making use of the internet as a platform, is teaching people on the Swayam platform by using multilingual languages. Added to it, we also have the AICTE, which has permitted the BTech programs in 11 native languages in tune with the national education policy as well. We did look at the challenges and concerns with respect to implementation. One, we do not have enough terminology, and the second major barrier is that people of late assume that it is only English or foreign languages which has the importance, so they are putting their children into English education. It is not that. We also have to focus on something positive as well. Let's take the example of European languages. The European languages like the French, the German, or let's take the example of Asian languages. The Asian languages like the Chinese, the Mandarin, as well as the Japanese languages as well, they are developing on their own. They have their own repository as well. So instead of focusing only on English, we can also focus on the regional languages, taking the example of European examples as well as the Asian examples, says the author. Yes, English education is important, but at the same time, if we are also able to develop on our own terms and conditions like it is happening in Europe and Asia, we would be in a much better process to inculcate this literacy skills in the homegrown native language, says the author. So the author goes on to say that in the near future, what we have to ensure is preserve our language, protect our language, pass this language from one generation to another. And how do we do it? That is by speaking continuously about it. That is by educating our people with the help of the language, and at the same time making sure that we use the very idea of technology and the internet penetration so that people do not lose their languages and it should not become extinct, says the author. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says the despotic nature of PMLA. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. The article primarily focuses on money laundering. What is money laundering? As the very name denotes, laundering of money. Let me simplify this process for you. Let's say there is an individual or an organization. How does it derive its money from? Let's say it is working on some of the illegal activities. Let's say drug trafficking or terrorist activity or involved in the crime. So the money that is generated from this illegal activity is laundered, whereby this illegal black money is turned into white money through a indirect legitimate process, is what is called as money laundering. So the money that is derived from the illegal process, the black money, is converted into white money. The illegitimate process becomes a legitimate one. That is what is called as money laundering. So the money that is derived from crimes like the drug trafficking or terrorist activity is converted into white money, is what is called as money laundering. When it comes to money laundering, there are generally three stages. What are these three stages? One is what is called as placement, second is what is called as layering, and the third state is what is called as the integration. What is this placement? Let's say for example there is a person or an organization which is engaged in the money laundering. So what they have is the money with them. So this particular money that they have generated, the finances that they have generated, is put into the financial system and an institution. So taking the illegal money generated by serious offenses, criminal offenses like terrorist financing, crimes or drug trafficking will all be placed, which means the illegal money will be put into the financial system. So placing of the illegal money into the financial system is what is called as placement. So what is placement? Taking the illegal money and putting it into the institution, putting into the system, is what is called as placement. This is the first step. Second step is what is called as layering. What exactly happens? Now it is put as part of the financial system. Let's say for example there is a person, he's got this money from illegal activity. Let's say he's giving you about 20 lakhs. So what do? You put this money into your account SBI, or let's say for example any other banking transaction, or you put this particular money in a company which is established by law. So transferring of this particular money into a particular company and conducting number of complex transactions of this particular money is what is called as layering. So what is layering? Layering is one after the other. So it means you're conducting number of transactions. So these transactions are complex in itself. They are a web of transactions, and ultimately this placed money into the financial systems over a period of time becomes so complex. That is what is called as layering. So finally, after all this transaction, where you move money from one source to another, from that source to another, from one organization to another, finally if this money comes back as something legitimate, that is what is called as integration. So basically it starts with placement, it goes through layering where it is a complex web of transactions, and finally when that money is seen to be seen as a legitimate money, if it is integrated as part of the system, that is what is called as integration. So in the placement, illegal money goes, black money goes, and when it comes to the integration, what you have is the white money or the legitimate money. So the money laundering happens in three important steps. It is not necessary it always happens with respect to these three stages. There might be number of stages which might also be omitted as well. Now let's understand what happens in the international quarters. Because there was money laundering that was happening in number of cases in number of countries, this happened to be a major problem to the countries. Why? On one side, they're losing on the economy, they're not getting enough taxes as well. On the other side, this money was also used for terrorist activities as well. So the global community comes together, they come up with number of laws and regulations, rules and conventions. Let's look at United Nations Convention Against Illicit Traffic in Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances, the Basel Statement of Principles 1989, the 40 recommendations of the Financial Task Force on Money Laundering, the Political Declaration and Global Program for Action adopted by United Nations General Assembly in 1990. So all these nations come together, they came up with number of rules and regulations. Ultimately, India, in order to fight the menace of money laundering, also comes up with its own law. Why? Because there are international obligations, there are international rules and conventions, there are countries which are asking India to come up with its own domestic law. So finally, what does India do? Because it has to comply by all these rules and regulations, and it also has international obligations as well. It comes up with its own domestic law called as Prevention of the Money Laundering Act. So this particular law, which was initiated back in the year 2002, is one of the major domestic laws in India, which is to prevent money laundering in India. So what are the objectives of this particular law? This will prevent the money laundering. This will basically make sure that illegal activities, economic crimes that happens and money is being laundered is not taken into picture at the economic level. So it is completely deleting this particular process, deleting this particular transaction, and in case there are proceeds of the crime, what are these proceeds of the crime? Let's say the money that is derived from the drug trafficking or from an illegal activity or from the terrorist activity, this money or the infrastructure developed because of this money, let's say there is buying a building or he's buying a car or he's buying any of the other resources, in such a case it is called as the proceeds of the crime. So the proceeds of the crime, if it is present, the same will be confiscated by the institution established under the Prevention of the Money Laundering Act. So what will it basically do? It will prevent money laundering, it will prevent illegal activity, it will confiscate the proceeds of crime, and ultimately penalize those individuals and companies who are engaging in this money laundering act. So under this particular program, if a person or an organization is caught, what are the penal provisions? One, such an individual would be put behind bars. So a person found guilty of money laundering, he will be put behind bars. Such a person would be imprisoned for a period of 3 years, and this can also go up to 7 years as well. And this person can also be imposed with fine or with both as well. And let's say if it is to do with Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, the punishment can also go up to 10 years as well. So we have the penal provisions of 3 up to 7 years, we have fine as well, we also have 10 years of imprisonment if it is under NDPS Act. So what are we discussing here? We are discussing about prevention of the money laundering. Which is the institute which looks into all this? Which is the institute which confiscates the property? Which is the institute which implements it? It happens to be the Enforcement Directorate. So under this particular article, in a democracy, when there is something smooth that is happening, what we require is due checks and balances on the functioning of the law enforcement agency. The law enforcement agency in this particular case is Enforcement Directorate, but unfortunately there is not due checks and balances with respect to this institution, as most of it is being used by the government for the political vendetta. There have been series of raids and arrests with respect to these politicians, their relatives and activists, and then there is suspicion that is being raised on the Enforcement Directorate, is what is this article all about. So what are the concerns with respect to the PMLA and the Enforcement Directorate? Let's look at some of the arguments as put out under this article. The ED has conducted about 1700 raids and launched special investigations in 1569 cases between 2011 and 2020. So the number of cases that it has launched in the past is about 1700 to 1569. But what have been the conviction? The conviction is just 9 in all these cases. So what does it mean? They are scaring people. They're just in the name of enforcing agency have been abusing their power as per the whims and fancies as per the call of the government is the first argument. The second argument is that most of these where the raids have occurred have been the political rivals or the dissenters, or few have been the activists as well. So such is the second major issue. The third is most of these are the genuine victims. These genuine victims are the people whose lands have been confiscated, whose properties have been confiscated. Illegitimate money was not the picture here, because they have been activists, because they have been dissenters, there have been abuse of power is the third argument. The fourth argument against the enforcement directorate is with reference to the enforcement case information report. What is this report all about? We have heard about the FIR. We did discuss about this particular FIR in our daily quiz as well. What is this case information report? Let's say there is the enforcement directorate which goes to a particular person, raids his particular house and also conducts an investigation. So this person on whom the raid is conducted, he should know what are the charges, what is he being accused of, why there is the enforcement directorate coming up to his house. All this information will have to be given. But what does the enforcement directorate do? It does not give this particular information, as it calls this particular report as the internal document. Ideally, if the police officers are arresting some particular person, they have to give information to that person on what charges he is being arrested. In this case, the enforcement directorate is conducting a raid, conducting an investigation. So ideally, for what this raid is being conducted, ideally has to be given, but they are not giving this particular information is another major issue. Added to it, if there is an accused who is not proved in the court of law that he is an accused who should be ultimately punished if he makes the statements during the proceedings, such statements are also made admissible even during the evidence as well. And finally, we have the establishment of appellate tribunal under the Prevention of the Money Laundering Act. Where does it speak about? It speaks about the appellate tribunal in section 25. The law provides a remedy of appeal to a tribunal under the PMLA. Since the year 2019, the tribunal is understaffed. There is no chairman as per the instructions given by multiple courts. This eliminates the remedy available to that particular accused against the unjustified attachment of the property as well. So the law has a particular process where there is appellate tribunal, but this is understaffed. When it is understaffed, who will listen to the grievances of this particular party who is to be called as accused under this particular law? So all these are the major problems when it comes to the PMLA. So going forward, there has to be a restriction, says this article. So the law has attacked the legal and constitutional principles, where the law in itself has made bail conditions very stringent, arrest of persons without supply of the report, non-communication of grounds of arrest to the accused, statement given by the accused during investigation made admissible as evidence during the trial, and ultimately, because of the broad definition of money laundering and proceeds of crime under this act, it is the accused who is the major sufferer. So going forward, the legislature will have to take all this into perspective and make amendments to this particular legislation, and the Supreme Court is currently hearing number of petitions with respect to the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. It has to pass a right judgment and serve justice to the accused and the victims, says this article. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says Remiss regulator. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. We have the Securities and Exchange Board of India. This happens to be a regulator authority established under the SEBI Act of 1992, and this happens to be the principal regulator when it comes to the stock exchanges in India. We have number of stock exchanges. Let's take for example, we have the National Stock Exchange. We also have the Bombay Stock Exchange, who has a vigilant eyes oversight on all these exchanges. It happens to be the Security and Exchange Board of India. SEBI has number of primary functions. What does it do? It protects the interests of the investors, promotes and regulates the Indian security markets, and also controls all these intermediaries, the stock exchanges that are present in the market. So the primary regulator of the stock exchange in India happens to be the Securities and Exchange Board of India. Then one of the important stock exchanges that we have in India happens to be the National Stock Exchange. The National Stock Exchange is the largest financial exchange in the Indian market, and this was established back in the year 1992 on the recommendations of a high-powered study group which made its recommendation, and ultimately we had the establishment of the National Stock Exchange. So the National Stock Exchange offers itself as a platform where number of companies can come up on this particular platform, raise the capital, and at the same time we also have investors who can access equities, currencies, debt, mutual funds on the platform of the National Stock Exchange. So the National Stock Exchange has a benchmark index called as Nifty 50. So Nifty 50 is the benchmark index of the National Stock Exchange, and the top 50 most traded stocks on the NSE forms what is called as the Nifty 50. Why are we discussing this? That is because the SEBI has an important role when it comes to the regulations of the National Stock Exchange. What does it do? SEBI governs all these exchanges through what is called as the Stock Exchanges Clearing Corporation regulations. SEBI also has the power under the law to regulate the stock exchange as well. So basically it is SEBI which has an oversight on all these important intermediaries and institutions, and ultimately whatever regulations it puts out, whatever rules it puts out, the same will have to be complied by the National Stock Exchange. So who has eye on all this? Who is watching all this? It is the SEBI. When it comes to the banking system in India, let's say for example State Bank of India, ICICI, Bank of Baroda, who is having a vigilant eyes on all the banking channels, it is the Reserve Bank of India. Similarly, when it comes to the National Stock Exchange, when it comes to the Bombay Stock Exchange, who has the vigilant eyes on it? It is the SEBI. So it is SEBI which has the power under the law, and these stock exchanges are regulated by the Security and Exchange Board of India. But what is the issue right now? The Securities and Exchange Board of India recently issued an order. According to it, there have been issues and concerns with respect to the operation of the National Stock Exchange. Let us try and understand what is this issue all about. There were two major issues recently that has occurred with reference to the National Stock Exchange. What is it? One is with respect to the appointment of the top level NSE official. The second is about sharing of confidential internal information with an unknown person. So the National Stock Exchange is one of the largest stock exchanges in India. So this is regulated by the rules regulations of SEBI. But what has happened in the recent past? We have Chitra Ramakrishnan, who happens to be the former managing director, chief executive officer of the National Stock Exchange. What does she do? She goes on to appoint one of the persons called as Anand Subramaniam as the chief strategic advisor to the National Stock Exchange. This is where the major problem is. So the first major problem is with respect to the appointment. Why is there a problem with respect to the appointment? Whenever you're appointing a person to the National Stock Exchange as a chief strategic advisor, what you would look through is through his resume, through his financial background, through the experience that this person has garnered over number of years. But unfortunately, when it comes to Anand Subramaniam, all this was not looked into. He happened to be a middle level executive. He did not have any experience when it comes to the finances. He did not have any finance background as well, and his salary when it was given was completely more, where he was offered a salary of 1 crore, and this went on to increase up until 4 crores as well. So whenever there is an interview that is being conducted, there will be number of people who take the interview as well. But in this particular case, Arvind Subramaniam was interviewed only by Chitra Ramakrishna and not by others. So when it comes to the mode of appointment, there is no transparency, and ultimately it means there is a major issue in the system is the first major concern. The second major issue is sharing confidential internal information with an unknown person. What does this mean? Ideally, when we are running a biggest institution like the National Stock Exchange, what we have to make sure is that this information is not given to a person who should not have that that particular information. But unfortunately, in the present situation, we had Chitra Ramakrishnan, who happened to be the CEO of National Stock Exchange, sharing the information of the company to an unknown person who was her spiritual guru. So she was giving the organizational structure details, dividend scenario, financial resources, human resource policy and related issues. All of this intricate information, secret information, was being given to this unknown person who happened to be her spiritual guru. And unfortunately, all this has happened not via the official channel, through an unofficial email ID. So some of the secret information of the National Stock Exchange was being delivered to an unknown person who was not part of the company. On one side, the appointment is not transparent. The salary that was given was exorbitant. It was more than 1 crore and it has reached to a peak of 4 crore as well. The appointment process was not transparent because that person did not have the financial background. He had no experience when it comes to these operations as well. And the second is that this information, which should not have been leaked from the company to an outside person, was also leaked as well. This means that SEBI, which should have had an oversight about all these issues, did not have the oversight, and it might be a loss to the investors. But unfortunately, what sort of loss has been caused to the investors is yet not deciphered by the SEBI. Ideally, like RBI, we have SEBI, which looks into the stock exchanges, the issues with respect to the investment in the stock market. But since it did not have the vigilant eyes, the investors might be the potential sufferers in this particular backdrop. Added to it, the other major concern is we have something called as the NSE board. This NSE board should also have a vigilant eyes on the operations of that particular NSE. But unfortunately, the NSE board also did not give information about what is happening with respect to the company in this particular case. So they should have ideally raised the red flags with respect to the operations, but even they did not do so, which means the institution as a whole has failed. The NSE's board did not function to their optimal level, and unfortunately, this would not send the right signal to the investors, says this article. After this particular issue occurred, what did SEBI do? SEBI has levied fines on parties involved in the acts of impropriety and also barred NSE from introducing any new products for a 6-month period. And at the same time, it is also planning to come up with more stringent rules and regulations with respect to the market infrastructure institutions. What are these market infrastructure institutions? The stock exchanges, the depositories, the clearing corporations are collectively together called as the security market infrastructure institutions. SEBI is also planning to come up with more stringent rules and regulations with respect to the stock exchanges, whereby they would be asking and coming up with a new structure, the tenure of the management, accountability for the lapses at this particular institution, and all of this will be checked in the near future by SEBI. So this entire saga points to a series of governance lapses at the stock exchange, and steps must be taken in the near future so that such failings do not recover, and ultimately this does not create fear and phobia in the investors of the stock exchange, is what is this article all about. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says on an equal footing. The article here is speaking about development paradigm in multiple states in India. The article says that there are some states in India which have a very good progress when it comes to the industrial activities and the development. There are other states in India whose growth is not much better. So the article here goes on to differentiate two types of states. One is what is called as high income states. The other is what is called as low income states. These states have different ways of generating the revenue, different ways of going about the growth and development. But in the near future, if all the low income states will also have to develop, there have to be few changes, says the author. How does the author say so? He takes into picture the high income states. He says Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana can be categorized as high income states. They together account for 56.4% of the factories, 54.3% of the net value added to the country, while their share in population is only about 32.3%. Apart from this, they have higher credit and financial accessibility. They also have much better credit deposit ratio as well. Now, when you consider the low income states, states like Bihar, Jharkhand, UP, MP, Odisha, and Rajasthan access only 15% of total institutional credit, barely 5% of total industrial credit, while their share of population is 43%. So 43% population, 32.3% population. So less population, they're utilizing more resources. More population, they have less resources at their disposal. These states, low income states, together receive only 50% credit from their hard-earned savings, and at the same time, the maximum benefit of Atmanirbhar package was also sent to high income states as they have a higher share in industry. So what does the author say? The author says that these high income states are developing at the cost of the low income states. The author also takes into picture the electricity, the power generation. When we speak about industrial development happens in those regions where there is continuous supply of power. So it is not only about continuous supply of power and electricity, how much of power, at what ratio, at what price is also being accommodated is also taken into picture. Let's say for example, whether that particular state is able to give a industrial body 24/7 supply. Are they able to give power at 16 hours, 18 hours a day? Are they able to provide power supply at 24 hours? One is that. The other happens to be the cost. There are a number of states which also provide subsidies as well. There are a number of states where the cost of power in that particular state would be comparatively low. So this article also goes on to say, so it is not only about credit, it is not only about infrastructure, it is also about power generation, power supply, and also about the power cost. So basically, if there are industries which are going, they are mostly going towards these high income states. Why? Because they have much better power supply. They are able to provide power to these industrial out units at a very low price, and as a result, adequate quality power at the cheapest rate is provided by all these high income states rather than the low income states. In order to overcome this, in order to make sure that every state develops, what we also have to focus is on the power sector. So the author goes on to say that what we have to come up in the near future is with the very notion of one nation, one grid, one frequency. What does this mean? This means that as of now, we have multiple grids. Let's say, for example, the north region grid, we have the eastern region grid, the western region grid, the southern region grid. All of this will have to be synchronized into one single grid called as the one nation, one grid, and one frequency. If we are able to do so, these power disturbances between the high income states and the low income states will be completely eliminated, and these industries may also opt for the low income states is the first recommendation. Added to it, the second recommendation the author makes is in reference to one tariff policy. What do we mean by one tariff policy? Let's say for example there is the state of Maharashtra, or let's take the example of Bihar. Maharashtra might be giving the power supply 24/7, and the rate at which it is imposing this particular tariff or the taxation on the electricity would be comparatively less. Let's say hypothetically it is about 5%, and if we consider the state of Bihar, hypothetically it may impose a tax rate of about 7% or 8% as well. So what we have is a different tariff in the low income states to that of the high income states. So the author here also makes a recommendation that what we require is one tariff policy, uniform policy across the length and breadth of India, for which the central government should initiate such a plan. Added to it, we also have the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, which is also working towards it with the one idea, that is one nation, one grid, one frequency, one price. If this comes into reality, then we would not have different tariffs and we would not have all these issues, and ultimately we might have these industries also moving their companies to these low income states, says the author. Further, we also require uniformity in electricity duty charged by different states. So what we should make sure is bring this electricity under the ambit of the GST, says the author. So bringing them as part of the GST will ultimately mean all these states will have a uniform pattern, since power is one of the important sectors when it comes to the industries. If we are able to have one price, one tariff, one grid, everything can be accommodated. Thereby, industries would be able to move from these high income states to the low income states, says the author. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says the budget spells green shoots for agriculture subsector. So this article here is speaking about the recent budget issues. We have discussed about the budget issue in a detailed elaborate video. We do have it on our YouTube playlist as well. What is this article speaking about? The article says that there are a number of people, number of economists who says that the government has not done much for the agricultural sector in this particular year's budget. However, the author goes on to say that this is a fallacy. Why? That is because the author says the livestock and the fishing sector contribute to about 33% of the gross value added in agriculture. As per the Situation Assessment Survey 2019, more than 15% of the income is derived from livestock subsector. So livestock and fishing being part of the agriculture, the government has introduced money into this particular sector and has brought massive changes, says the author. How does the author say so? He substantiates the same with the help of the statistics. The allocation for the livestock health and disease control, which happens to be a major concern for those working in this particular sector, has been increased from 886 crores to about 2000 crores, which is a rise of 126%. So there is an improvement in the livestock sector. The allocation for National Livestock Mission has also increased by more than 100 crores, which is up by 42%. Then if you're taking the fishing sector, we have one of the major schemes called as the Pradhana Mantri Matsya Samvada Yojana. This happens to be a flagship program of the fishery sector, and it has received an increase of 679 crore, which is at an approximate value of 57% in comparison. Then we also have the production linked incentive scheme for food processing, which has also received a huge increase from 10 crore to about 1022 crores. So this means that the government is able to give the push to the agriculture sector, may not be directly but through the subsectors which are part of agriculture, says the author. Added to it, the author also goes on to say that in the much other sectors like the Pradhana Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana or the Pradhana Mantri Awas Yojana or the Pradhana Mantri Rural Livelihood Scheme, there have been small increases, but when it comes to Manrega, which is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, the amount has been reduced. So the author says overall, when we are looking into it, the government is also able to bring and support, promote Kisan drones, encourage the startup as well, and it also wants to ensure that technology is integrated with the agriculture. So overall, the government has been able to make changes when it comes to agriculture, boosted the productivity of subsectors in agriculture, given boost to the technology in agriculture, whereby the youth who will be migrating to urban sectors need not have to do so, they can do so at the rural level as well. So big ticket announcements may not be seen directly, but they are all hidden in the form of the subsectors, says the author in this particular case. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Globalization and westernization have impacted not just the growth but also the survival of many Indian languages and dialects. Discuss the measures taken to protect the linguistic and cultural identity of India. Next question. Prevention of Money Laundering Act takes away an individual's liberty, depriving them of constitutional guarantees. Elaborate. So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. If you liked our initiative, please do like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.